This is Political Core, the non-PC edition of The Aaron Cruz Show, where you decide the topics. The only place where you get the news you want from the people you trust. We are your balanced and accurate information resource.
Good evening and welcome to the Aaron Cruz Show, coming to you live from the Coachella Valley here on Second City Radio, California. This is Political Core. We have taken over the Thursday night show, Queen of Politics, to bring you much needed information we were not able to get you on Tuesday night. I am your hostess, Aaron Cruz. Thank you for joining me. Tonight's topic is about the border wall. Border versus budget. So, some of the areas we are going to be discussing are the border effects on California, SDUSD, job growth, free market, and contracts. Now, many people across the nation have a dream to secure our borders, and if you share that same dream, President Donald J. Trump is your man. He's great. You may not always like him, you may not always love him, or you may love him but not like his policies. No matter where you stand on Trump, he says things in a way that only Trump can. And he does things in a way that only Trump does them. And you just have to look at a couple memes to see that. Donald Trump has big dreams to fulfill at the request of the people who called him up to lead this great nation. And it's not just a wall. It is, and I quote Trump, a big, beautiful wall. You have to give the man some credit. He has a way with words. So let's shift gears for a minute. I want to talk to you about future programming. I'd like to give you some time to think about something for me for our show here. Please be thinking about the things that matter, topics and issues that affect you or questions you might have want answered. And at the end of the show, I'll give you our contact information for you to reach out. It really means a lot to me that I can look into the issues that affect you locally. I've heard from a few dozen people on the topics they want to hear and discuss, and I'm going to go ahead and list them for you. Some of the topics are Constitution, individual rights, free and open markets, limited government, getting America off of welfare, literally and figuratively, why our universities are changing the heart and soul of our kids, activist judges, and Democrat politicians that profited from Russia is one of the topics, and Republican leadership issues, which we might touch on a few of those tonight, especially with the passage of Obamacare revisions and amendments. And so back to the topic of the border wall. So there's a claim out there, and I'm not sure if you've seen it, but that the cost of the wall is the equivalent of 1.5 aircraft carriers. So we'll get into that a little bit later too. But the border length itself is nearly 2,000 miles for an exact length of 1,954 miles. Not all of the border needs a wall. That's what a lot of people say, and others want a robust and beautiful wall, the entire stretch of the Mexican-U.S. border. And I might be one of those people, but, it depends on what topic around the wall that we're talking about that I might feel very strongly about needing a robust and beautiful wall. But, it varies. But many areas across the border already have a wall or a barrier to help cut down on human and drug trafficking. And, I lived in San Diego for years, and along the San Diego-California border, there's one portion of the border wall, and they call this the Smuggler's Gulch Fence. And it was designed as only part of a $60 million engineering project to fortify 3.5 million miles worth of border land. So that's $60 million to fortify 3.5 miles worth of border land. And that's just a tiny portion of the San Diego border. And you think about that for a minute, and some places in San Diego are more vulnerable than others to persons crossing, and some are a little bit rigid and desolate, and you may not have as many people coming over across on foot, but to try to work these projects, it's a large undertaking. So what's the reported cost of the wall? So many numbers are out there, and it's really kind of hard to tell. What Trump had estimated at one point, I think originally $4 billion. And then he changed it, and it was about $6 to $7 billion, and then he put it at about what might be seen as a more realistic number of $10 billion. But by the firms and government agencies that actually look at these things, and they analyze these things. They have people on the ground to bring in, materials and supplies, and they know what everything costs down to the bolt. One of those firms is Bernstein Research, and they analyze material costs. They put together the prices, and their estimate was between $15 and $25 billion for the wall. And that was not the entire wall. Okay, that was for a 1,000-mile stretch that was 40 feet high, which we now know has been reduced. I think Trump has asked for 30 feet of the wall to be built. Beautiful on the north side and practical on the south side. But think about that for a minute. $15 to $25 billion. That's a $10 billion gap. You're going to hear this a lot. That's a lot of money. Okay? It's a gap. That's more than a few bolts. So why would we want to be off by $10 billion? I'm really thinking from reading a lot of the news out there these days. Some people are calling it fake news. Some people refute that and say it's good news. Who knows? But when we look at these stories, there's so many numbers out there. The estimates are shaky. It almost seems like a guess, really. Not even an educated one, but in any case. So Senator Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said that they would be estimating that it would be $12 to $15 billion. Now, that's a better spread right there. It's only a $3 billion gap on that one. But that's a lot of bolts missing there. That's a lot of money in that gap. And then we take a look, and down in February 2017, we have a leaked report from the Department of Homeland Security that put it much higher at a $21.6 billion price point. I think that's probably a lot more practical number. So then in April 2017, we had the Democratic staff of the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee say in a report, now, hold on, sit down, it could soar to $70 billion. Wow. Okay. Now, I'm thinking that might be a reach. I mean, what do I know? But are they trying for headlines there? I mean, what is the kind of the objective there? To scare you with the ticket? Scare you with the bill? So that's a $50 billion gap right there, more than any other group had estimated. All right. And then Senator McCaskill wrote later on that the border could cost as much as high as $200 for each American, okay? Her estimate is on a closed-door briefing where the estimate was $2.6 billion for fewer than 75 miles of the new border wall. That's $36.6 million per mile. That's a lot of money right there. So according to her calculations, is that too much to pay for the wall? $200 for each American? I mean, I know that's a small portion of it, but that's a good question. So think about that for a minute. Now, after really reaching into the political core of the matter, all right, the most reliable and close number by all of the reports and the chatter around the subject is that the $21.6 billion is reported by the Department of Homeland Security. It was probably the most realistic. Now, we know that most government programs can balloon over the scope of the projects because everyone wants a piece of the pie, and government is handing out money. Well, not anymore. I think we've closed the gap on that. Trump has taken in the reins, but We know that government is not efficient as it stands historically. Most projects, they actually end up exceeding project money 3x, okay? This was seen in the green initiatives back to 2008 to 2010, cash for clunkers, like the solar rebate programs that we saw go through, those all hit 3x, okay? So now, given Trump's administration goals, the desired size and scope of the bordered wall, not already constructed and timelines and proposed expenses, and also given Trump's ability to negotiate costs, this may be a kind of a landmark project that can help boost many areas of our collective nation. So I see a lot of jobs, manufacturing, a lot of money going into homes too. That's work. So in one way, the border wall is a win-win-win for the American people as a whole, and perhaps, depending on what role Mexico wants to play, maybe it could be a win-win-win for their people as well. So back to our aircraft carrier conversation earlier. Now, the Navy Ford-class aircraft carrier is estimated at $12.9 billion. Now, kind of just ride with me on this one. Up from some recent Nimitz-class carriers that cost about $8.5 billion. Okay? That's a $4.4 billion, gap. Think about that. Now, I don't build ships. I don't build aircraft carriers. I'm not in the military. I'm not, that's not my job. But when I look at these stories, when I look at these numbers thrown out there by media and by political officials, and, it doesn't matter what side, okay, the conservative side, the liberal side, with the R, with the D, it doesn't even matter if it's, the public official versus the media. It's all seems to be wishy-washy trash. But when you look at this right here, okay, you can see from this aircraft carrier comparison that I'm showing you right here with the $12.9 billion versus the $8.5 billion from, in that $4.4 billion gap, that a lot has happened in the last 10 years or so. Costs have risen. We kind of have to, we need to actually just think about that. Actual costs, perception of costs, they've changed drastically in the last 8 years under Obama specifically. Doesn't matter what side you're on, just think about it. Okay? So there's a large disparity in what it takes financially to get things done in today's world. Okay? It takes big money. It takes big money. And I know anti-war folks won't like this especially, and, open borders folks, they won't like this maybe especially, but we kind of have to think about these things for our national security interests, okay? Those areas that matter, they keep our families safe, all right? So let's go back to the wall. When using the preliminary numbers for the wall, the comparison for the aircraft carrier claim, the comparison isn't correct. Okay, the entire border wall will cost, with a conservative amount standing as our comparison, at $21.6 billion. About 1.67 times the amount of the new and more robust warships. Okay? So why compare apples and oranges anyway? Because many think we need to buff up our military rather than build a wall. Some think we need both. Okay, some think we don't need either. But, that's in and of itself can be a topic that we talk about and we can cover, if you like, on a separate show. So, in my opinion, okay, this is my opinion, I'm throwing out numbers and I'm talking about different things, but in my opinion, a bunch of ships do us no good if we're being constantly infiltrated by those south of our border. Now, I'm not just talking about Mexico, and I'm not just talking about, and I'm not just talking about the adults I mean, there are human trafficking issues, child sex trafficking issues that surround very kind of sad and scary part about the border wall issue and debate here. But I think when we look at it, we need a multifaceted approach, a balanced approach to the border issue. Okay? We need to think about not just building a wall, not just putting boats in our seas and subs out in our waters. Okay? We need to think about what's going on that south side of the border, okay, in those other nations, and what's going on up here to drive people to need to come here. And we need to close that gap. We need to really work on our side of the border to make sure that there are protections for those who need them, children who might end up here in a really bad space, who've been sent over against their will and put in a position of being used and trafficked over here for sex. And we need to worry about those children, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But we have to figure out a way, okay, to stop the people who keep coming over repeatedly, over and over again. They sent back, and they come back, and they sent back. Especially the criminal aliens. We just saw ICE crack down in 5 states, all right, arresting lots of criminal, illegal aliens. And I'm glad to see that, because when we send a message, a clear message to the other side of the border, okay, that it's, once you get here, you're not going to be able to stay. Okay? Your family's spending a lot of money, you're spending a lot of money. I think that alone will cut down on the amount of people coming across the border at will. But let's get back to the original topic. Building the wall and the impact on our economy, because this is a big ticket issue for us all over Southern California. Okay, the real dig is this. Recently, San Diego Unified School District moved to block any state funds to those contractors who helped to build the border wall. So it seems that there is a huge lack in big picture understanding for our school officials. Okay? Why would they move to do such a thing? What is their motivator? They're teachers. They care about children who are coming across and needing schooling, paid for by our tax dollars, of course. It seems that those on the side of no wall care a lot about our friends on the other side of the border. Now, I care too, trust me, and a lot of people do care about the other side of their border. But this is their own issue. There's a big picture. Mexico protects its border, all right? We've seen that with the Marine who took the wrong turn and got caught over there for a long time, all right? Trapped in this Mexican prison, can't get out. He was having a bad day, which turned into months and months and months and months and months. Okay, Mexico defends their borders. We need to protect and defend ours. And, so when Mexico protects its border, we protect ours. That creates what's called economic stability. So what do these teachers have to lose if we tighten our borders? They have a lot to lose. Funding. Their budgets are based on students and student attendance, and without getting into it too much, all right, there are 3 groups of students the teachers in San Diego Unified School District don't want to lose. Okay, and I'll talk about that. The first group are children who cross the border to attend school every day, all right, every day, under the address of a loved one on the U.S. border side, or friend, family member. Okay, and they go to school here. Then the second group are the children here of illegals. They might be citizens born here, or maybe they're non-citizen, smuggled children that have by law, have to be let to attend school, regardless of holding a social security number. It is regulation. Children, all children of proper age must attend school regardless of legal status. And yes, I will give you the links to all my research after the show. The third group is composed of children who are called, quote unquote, unaccompanied minors. Now, those are children who are brought here illegally, only to be found by our Border Patrol or Immigration Customs Enforcement. These children are processed by Health and Human Services, all right, and they're placed in holding areas. They're usually shelters or homes, processing centers. They're given health care. They're integrated into our society, depending on their situation, dictates how and where they're placed among us. And then they're let to use our educational institutions. And many times while they're in those homes, they're transitioned through the process. And then as time goes on and they're placed in homes, they're led into our educational institutions. And many of us my friends in politics, we really hit on that a lot a couple of years ago. It's a big issue. It's crowding our classrooms. So, but in any case, these details on these children are quite robust, all right? Many different organizations benefit from both federal and state funds to address the influx of these children. A lot of people benefit from these children. We're talking federal workers, we're talking state workers, we're talking city workers, county workers, all forms of government, nearly all forms of government benefit in some way, all right, from the influx of these children. Okay. Let's talk about the emotional issue of human trafficking, because I think it really needs to be addressed. We have these children, but there aren't just children coming across the border. And I think that when I talked about needing a more comprehensive solution, part of it is, when people know they can try to come over and it's a 50-50 chance, they go to what's called a coyote. And these people, whether connected to the drug cartels in some way or what have you, they're being paid amount of money, or they're promised amount of money to get these persons across our border. Now, these persons may be from Mexico, they may be south of the border of Mexico, from South America, but nonetheless, they're giving money or other things to these coyotes to bring them over here, or even the cartels, to bring them over here. And not all the conditions are safe. If these people know that the chances of getting across the border have decreased, all right, that there is a higher risk for them being caught, they may think twice about staying home and maybe fixing their issues at home, fixing their own communities, building their own more safe environment, building their own economies, building their own state back up. I really think, even just since Trump has come into office, that those numbers have dropped significantly. So if they see a wall going up and those numbers start to drop, less and less people are going to come over. But there are going to be those desperate individuals who want to get to this side. Now, I've read a lot, and I've seen a lot, and I've heard a lot, and I've talked to a lot of people about the drug cartels and coyotes, okay? And one of the things is supply and demand, all right? So these people want to come over here. Now, if the cartels know the numbers, okay, and the coyotes know, they all know the numbers. So if they can only get a certain number of people over here, and they can only meet a certain amount, that's going to drive costs up. So price per head is going to skyrocket. Black market is going to balloon. They're going to get a lot of money, a lot more money per head. right? The risk is higher if they get caught because the border presence is more robust. I mean, that all plays into their price. So for them, they don't care how many people they bring over. They drive that price up, and they're just going to be bringing over less people, higher cost. So one, we have to make it harder on those persons on that side of the border. If they get caught, there has to be a really, really bad day involved for them, okay? We need to send a message. This is no joke. All right? Higher costs on the heads of humans, it's not going to pay. All right? And then on this side of the border, we definitely need to work on, the hiring of illegals and undocumented, as they call them, immigrants, because when employers think that they can get away with hiring somebody at a lower price, not pay tax, and skirt the system, it's a bad day for everyone. And it's not just a bad day for the person they're hiring, it's a bad day for the people that think that they can come over here and get here safely, and they put themselves at risk. When women come over, or men come over, or young boys or young girls come over here from south of the border, they're in an at-risk situation. Many of them are abused when they get here, right? So when we look at this, we really have to think about this. That it's not just our responsibility to say, oh, I'm a no borders person, We have to think about it from the human side of things. The human perspective. What's important. These people need to stay home. They need to work on their communities. And coming here puts them at risk. So when employers hire on our side and they bring this person from the whatever home building shop and they pick them up and have them work for them all day long, when they do that sort of thing, they're sending a message when that worker sends money home to his country, to his family, okay? They're sending a message that, hey, you can make money if you're in America. Well, that person who's hired that illegal undocumented worker basically just put families at risk south of the border. That's irresponsible. And as an American citizen, as a business person, there should be a high price to pay if you're encouraging that sort of behavior. And, I know there are laws and I know that there are repercussions for hiring illegals, but I think we really need to look at comprehensive reforms. All right, but let's get back to the numbers. So what does this mean monetarily when we think about the students and everything? So what does this mean monetarily? It affects both federal and state budgets. Let's look at that. So over 840,000 immigrant students, 4.6 million English learners, okay? And the overall cost of unaccompanied minors alone, nationally, for fiscal year 2016 is $948 million, okay? That's almost $1 billion. Remember, the wall is 21.6 on the high estimate. So annually, that's $948 million for unaccompanied minors. California alone has fiscal year 2015 budgeted $14 million under the Title III immigration education monies, with an additional $1.8 million supplement from the feds, okay? That only covers like a base segment. That's $14 million plus the 15.8 million, only covers a tiny section, a sliver of California school costs. All right? But that's a lot of money to those teachers who don't want that wall built. For what reasons? You can come to your own conclusion on that one, but 1 + 1 is 2, unless you're using Common Core math. So it's not hard to see that the costs with the unaccompanied minors alone at $1 billion annually, with other notable sources that the state and illegals nationally cost our nation upward of $85 billion. Now, Trump said, I think it was like, I think 113 billion, but his numbers were they were like a really top end. And when I look at things, I'm kind of on the right perspective, I am pro border wall and I do have some leanings. But when I think about these things, I try to think of them from a neutral state, from a balanced perspective, from kind of this position of wanting to understand the big picture, okay? So nationally, I when I looked at that, it looked about $85 billion annually from all the reports I read. So now, and I know that there are a lot of numbers out there. I read them. So, and I understand that the folks here that are here illegally, they impact our economy, and in some ways it's good, and I know in some ways it's bad, but in some ways it is good, and many of them do end up paying tax in some form or another, and people cite that argument all the time. But the point is, okay, that the $21.6 billion is really peanuts in the big picture. It's peanuts. All right? So, of our annual budget, and maybe you guys are all yawning. I can't tell. I only see a few people chatting, and I've kind of been preoccupied, this being my first show, so thank you everybody for joining me. But when we look at our total annual budget of $3.54 trillion, okay, let me say that again. When we look at our total annual budget for 2016 of $3.54 trillion, 21.6 is chump change. I think if you work that out, and we probably have a lot of math whizzes here, it's like less than 0.5%. It's tiny little crumb. Okay, 3.5 trillion is what we spend annually. This wall is a one-time deal. With maintenance, obviously, you have to, as you saw earlier when I talked about fortifying the wall in a small portion, you do have to spend money on maintenance. But overall, that's a tiny little bit of money. So it may be change and it may be chump change, but this is your change, okay? So I get the need to think about it. But think about the investment, okay, long term. And really think about those children, the families that are leaving their homes, escaping corruption, escaping a world that's cruel and harsh, escaping poverty or living conditions that might be harsh. Now, you say, well, we have open arms. Well, look. All right. People have to build their own nations. Families need to unify. Communities need to band together. They need to do what they can to fix their nations. Okay? Long has it come since we have just let people in our doors, and it's created economic instability. It's created an atmosphere of, entitlement by some. And these people they need to build their own nations. What other people don't think about, what citizens don't think about, is we also give foreign aid to these nations. That is big money we spend. So not only are these persons coming here, sending their people here in droves, they're coming over the border. Not only do they come here, and then we spend money on them here in the tens of billions of dollars. We're sending tens of billions of dollars back over to these nations in the form of financial aid. And that financial aid money, where is it going to? Think about that. We Where is that money going to? It's going to the governments. Where is that money that's going to the government going? Are those governments so corrupt that that money is not trickling down to its people? Or is it that the people are so disadvantaged that they have no way to stand up against their corrupt government to pressure about the money that's been given for aid? Or do they not even know? Are they not even aware? Okay? The way I look at it is, until we get the correct information to the people that live south of the border, be it them just getting wind that coming here is not a good idea, be it us reaching out via some sort of, and I hate to say propaganda campaign, but informational way to these persons to let them know that they need to empower their own, that they need to stand up against government. Okay? Until that happens, there's going to be, there's not going to be any change in those nations. We're going to keep spending money and spending money and spending money and spending money for what? Why are we giving aid if people are just coming here only for us to give aid here? Okay? So if we're going to give aid, I think it's all good and dandy. But the governments need to be responsible and have it go to their people. Education, resources, things that, the most basic of needs need to be met. We're spending billions on foreign aid, okay? And I want to touch on this really quickly. I did speak with one girlfriend of mine, and she, she and I were talking about this issue. She told me it's an interesting time in certain nations, and hers in particular, she was talking about Vietnam. And she said that it's an interesting time talking to her friends, that they had told her and her family that, they're in a place where they're realizing that they as a people have power. That the corruption, if they as a people realize that they have power, the corruption can't stand against them. There are more people than there are, good people than there are corrupt. And my girlfriend, she was saying how she had come here for better opportunities, and she's worked hard to build a life here and her family here, and she's talked to her family back home in Vietnam, and she's thrilled to see the kind of fire in the eyes of the people there, that they're wanting better things for Vietnam. They're wanting better things for the community. They're expecting more out of their government. They're, I think, rightfully demanding that they have the power. And that's when she and I had this conversation about democracy versus a republic. All right, and I know this is kind of a little bit off topic of the border wall, but I think it's also important to address, is that, as a democracy, the masses rule. Okay, but as a republic, the minority stands. And we saw that in this last election. And she and I were talking about that, and she interestingly enough said, yeah, they mention democracy a lot. Their view of democracy is really America. And I think media has done a really good job at pushing the idea of democracy across the globe. But really, a representative republic is where it stands. It's the power of the people, the power in the hands of the people. And so she and I talked about that, and so she's going to impart a little bit of that knowledge with her friends and family back home. But I really did. I was happy to hear about Vietnam and their strive for a better nation and a better communities, and cracking down on government corruption. And that gives me hope. That gives me hope that nations with people who maybe don't, Vietnam is a great country, but these people are finding hope again. And it gives me hope for the people south of our border, okay, that they too can rise up and have fire in their eyes, fire in their belly for good things for their nations, their communities, and their families down there south of the border, and make positive change to the point where they don't have to come here, okay? So When we I want to go back to the investment, okay, and about those children and the sex trafficking and kind of those issues south of the border that drive, the pricing and everything else. I think that when you get to the core of the issue, this is not a numbers issue at all. Okay, this isn't a budget issue at all. When you talk to citizens and you bring up the border wall, I believe it's crystal clear that this is a fundamental belief system issue. Okay, people have to learn how to remove their feelings or find a balance and press Congress for national security interest initiatives and programs that protect the citizenry in a fiscally and socially responsible way, okay? They have to. They have to think about it from a balanced approach. And not so much with the money, because when you look at media campaigns and when you look at all those numbers, and I'm blurting them out all through the show, and you kind of think, where is she going with this? Where is she going with this? Where is she going with this? It's almost like the media, right? You open up your website, your internet, and this or that news outlet pops up. And you have 5 stories on the same subject, and they're all throwing out information, and you think, wait a minute. What information is correct? It's a lot, and so it's propaganda what we're seeing. But if we can take away that money issue and really think about it, what they're trying to do is they're trying to muster up that kind of tension inside of you, that fundamental belief system, and they use the money, and they use the sob stories, and they use certain tactics, Alinsky tactics. They throw 20 different stories at us in different directions, and they help try to balloon one or two, and then they distract, and then, it goes on and on and on and on. But when you look at each individual topic, I think you really have to think about it from not a numbers issue. Think about your family. Think about your responsibility as an American citizen. Not just fiscal responsibility, but the social responsibility you have to your family, to your neighbors, and so on, your country. All right, and I think that will help a little bit and kind of tame down the news when you read it, is you won't get so upset and kind of think about it in a more personal perspective instead of just data, and which story's right, and propaganda's all over the place. So I got interesting news the other day, and I kind of want to shift gears just a little bit on you. So the Heritage Foundation has kind of been, I don't know if many of you are active out there or involved with the Heritage Foundation in some way or familiar with it at all. They have Heritage Action and they have the Heritage Foundation. And in one of my information sessions, we were talking about the budget, okay, because we're going to go back to numbers just a little bit. And the budget and the monies that were just put through, okay? We kind of had big hopes in November that we refunded the government with the understanding that kind of when we hit that spring funding deadline, with the shift of administration, we'd revamp a little bit on the funding goals and kind of move the energies. And this isn't being met. And Congress, what I've seen with money, has been wishy-washy. Now, there's been a lot of stuff going on about Obamacare today and the amendments, and I don't know if anybody wants to talk about that. You can, when I give you information a little bit later, over chat, hopefully, I don't know if Foxy is over here, maybe she can go ahead and put her email address in the chat box so people could email questions or topics. Maybe we could talk about Obamacare a little bit, but Congress is wishy-washy. They're just kind of letting the Democrats go. So this omnibus spending bill was a huge fail. Okay? $298 million being sent down to Puerto Rico to bail out their medical system, okay? Some people say that the upshot was that we were given $1.5 billion for the border construction. But, and I bring this up because I'm talking about the border wall. And, some people were, activists were talking about how we at least got a little bit of something, but our wall wasn't in there. And Democrats were kind of cheering on the sidelines saying, yeah, you didn't get your wall. But we gave you a little bit for your border construction, $1.5 billion. But that's actually what it turns out is that's only really for border security. Kind of scary how they twist that for border construction to border security. So it's imperative, I believe, no matter what side of the border wall issue you're on, okay, that I think that you contact, as a constituent, it's important for you to contact your local and state and federal officials to ensure that those monies are spent wisely. Because it says from other people inside the government and in reports that it is for construction. It's not. It's for border security. So which is it? So I think that we as constituents should speak our mind. That's $1.5 billion of our $21.6 billion. Should that be a ramp up in security, or should that really actually go to construction like they're saying it supposedly does when it doesn't? That's a big portion of our wall. So, in any case, I really think that's important that we follow up on that issue, because that's just a recent event. This is just this last week. So if you want to contact your congressperson on the border wall issue, you can do so by calling 202-224-3121, or you can go to www.house.gov or www.senate.gov. And you can also look up other resources on my website. I have a full tab for that, and that's erincruz.com, ERINCRUZ.com. Or you can send an email, an inquiry, and I'll help in whatever way that I can. I do a lot of information resource gathering for persons who contact me. So I'd be glad to help. And you can send an email to Second City Radio, California Cruise @gmail.com. That's the word second, SECOND, City, Radio, CACRUZ @gmail.com, or info@erincruz.com. And I'll also be sending out references to the data provided on the show. Please be sure to like us on social media, Politicor, and for all things politics, @Wagner Girlie. That's WAGNERGIRLE on Twitter, if you're on Twitter. If not, you can just follow me on Facebook, or you can just send me an email to the emails I just listed. So now I want to tell you, we have a great and growing lineup here on Second City Radio, California. So one show is specifically for our veterans. Now, I have a heart for the nation. I don't know, a little girl, I grew up, I did parades and with ponies and 4-H and community things, and I have a heart for the nation. I also have a heart for our veterans. We have some military in my family, and these people do extraordinary things. Many have fought in wars. Some suffer from really tough issues, not just that you can see. Some are difficult issues in the mind, and in any case, I have a heart for the veterans. And so the show, it's called the Coachella Valley Veterans Connection. And I think that many of you would really enjoy hearing Corey Kelly when it airs. It airs on Wednesday evenings from 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I know many of my friends, you live on the East Coast, but, I really think that it's worth it. And I know he's a local guy here in the desert, and he likes to do good things and connect with the community. But I know, there are many different ways that we can help one another. And it's not always being right here. Sometimes maybe somebody just needs to talk on the telephone. Maybe you can be available to talk with somebody. I don't know. But I think watching his show or listening to his show might be beneficial. And then we also have this other show, and I just love it. I love it, love it, love it. It's called, I love it, Rise and Shine and Elevate. Okay? It's starting your morning off right with music that'll energize your day. And really, literally, it's a build-up. It's a really kind of organic build-up to your day, so you can play it while you're getting ready and sipping your coffee. So I love it. So anyway, as always, we want to grow together, find common solutions, find common ground, and I will answer any questions that I can. I don't ever want you to hesitate to reach out. We're in this together. And I really feel strongly on this border issue. I know I was supposed to go on Tuesday night, and I had, it was my first show, and I was so excited to sit with you guys and share with you about the border and kind of the perspective, the different monies involved and everything. And my system crashed, and so I was kind of brokenhearted about that. But really, I had to bring this to you tonight because I really want you to take the time to think about it, to think about the issues, to think about the people involved on both sides, here and on both sides, on the other side of the border. And talk. I think it's important to talk to one another. I know these aren't popular subjects. I know that this isn't maybe dinner table appropriate. But if we don't talk to one another, we don't try to understand where somebody is coming from, and we just assume that somebody's going to shut us down, and we have a closed mind, nothing is going to happen. Nothing will get better in this nation. Nothing. There's only one way that we will be able to bring our nation back from the destructive communication, and that is to listen and to share, not from the mind, but from the heart. We have to care. We have to take the time. We have to take the moment and stop what we're doing and have those conversations. Even if they're uncomfortable, even if they start to get heated. And one thing I'll share with you is, as I talk to a lot of different people from different backgrounds and different perspectives, and to hear somebody talk about that maybe something you don't agree with, and they're maybe in a fluster, and it could be an immigration issue or border issue, or what have you, and it's hard to listen to them because you just want to speak, you just want to tell them what's on your mind. Well, I think we need to just stop and maybe listen. You don't have to agree with somebody. Think about how you're standing and looking at them. Think about how your body is positioned, and be a little bit more open to kind of trying to understand where they're coming from, and really caring, and really connecting. Because that connection to one another as a nation, as a people, as citizenry, and as children of God, whether you're religious or not, as people, as a humanity, that's what makes us who we are. That's what's going to bring healing. Okay? And so, when we connect with people about those topics that are uncomfortable, and we take the time to listen, and they see that we care, right? They're going to be able to tell if you care or not. If you don't care, they're just going to get uppity if you start spewing something out. But if they can see that you care, they may ask you a question, and then you can share. And I always say sharing is caring. So if you really care about them, you won't just appease them and nod. You'll share your view on the issue of the border and maybe some information that you learned today or that you read about from the links that I'll provide you, or some other research that you do as a result of thinking about this show, and be able to have those conversations without feeling uncomfortable. Because when you feel strong and confident about what you're talking about, what you're sharing because you care, that person will be able to see it. The information will penetrate. And whether or not you change that person's mind right there on spot is not important. The conversation that you had, the willingness and the openness, the time that you took away from your day to connect with that person, that's what makes impact. So I really think and feel strongly that it's, I kind of bumped everywhere around on this, but on this show about the border and the numbers and then the people and the human trafficking and kind of the tense portion of it, the emotional portion of it. We didn't even get into the kind of information that I wanted to tonight, because I really wanted to touch on this connection with people, because that's where it's at. You can have all the information in the world. You can be empowered with data overflowing. But if you don't have the ability to connect and to share and to listen and communicate, you have nothing. And right now in our nation, we need a lot of something. And I know you are really kind of thinking about that. And it is true. We need a lot of something. And I'm going to tell you, it's not necessarily the information we're getting. Because we have a lot of information right now, and where is it getting us? So that's why I wanted to have this show. And I've been reaching out since 2008 and 9, and political activism of all different kinds, behind the scenes mostly, online presence obviously. I've met a lot of great people doing just phenomenal things on both sides of the aisle. Okay, but I really have a heart for the people. I have a heart for our citizenry, for our nation, what we've built, what we did so courageously, not that long ago. 1776. I mean, a lot of brave people. We have to take the time. We have to nurture that. We've let it go. And it's gotten out of control, so we need to bring it back. And the one way we can do that is educate ourselves, not only with information, but using good information, solid information, learning how to communicate that information through understanding, listening, learning, body language. We can go into that another time too. But that's why I wanted to create this show, was to not only touch on the issues, not only get into the core of the matter, the deep, deep, deep core of the matter, but to also talk about the human level of the issues. Because that's where it's at, people. How does CNN, whatever, or whatever news network get you to their channel? They use your emotions. We need to take the emotion out of it in that perspective and start putting the human emotion in and caring and talking to people. So I don't want to beat that into the ground, but I do think it's important. So that's why, I worked to create my platform over the years. And then when I ran into the radio station here, it's been phenomenal. And this is just so wonderful of an opportunity. I couldn't pass it up to be able to share with you over Second City Radio, California. It's wonderful. So it's always going to be live. I'll be on here. The more I do it, the better I'll be on chat. I know I'm not on chat tonight, but that'll come. So we've got to fix things in this nation, and my heart is for the people. And I'm hoping your heart is there too. If you're listening tonight, I know it is. So, but I just want to say thank you for joining me, Erin Cruz, on the very first edition of Political Core, the Erin Cruz Show. And I'd like for you to go ahead and join me next Tuesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for Political Core. This is where we get to the core of the issues that matter to you with information you can use to make positive change in your community, in your state, and in your nation. I hope you have a blessed evening all. God bless you, and God bless America.
To hear more and to learn more on how you can make an impact or about Political Core and The Aaron Cruz Show, visit us online at aaroncruz.com. That's ERINCRUZ.com. Thank you for joining us, and see you at the same time and the same place next week.